Hi, and welcome to the session Planning Your Day at University. My name's Pat Moores. I'm director and co-founder of the UK Education Guide, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Lukas Schlenker to our fair today. Just to give you a brief overview of why Lukas is here. Lukas graduated from the Warwick Business School in 2020, and he excelled there with a distinction. And prior to that, he studied as an undergraduate and did his degree at Exeter, University of Exeter. So Lukas is now running a business. He's managing director of Deltron Lifts Limited in Leamington Spa. But we thought it'd be great to get a recent graduate who's gone through both undergraduate and postgraduate studies to give you an overview of how to plan your time at university. Because that's come up as a real issue in the fair in September, about moving from a very structured life at school to a much less structured life at university. So Lukas is fresh in his mind, well, from 2020, so not that long ago. So we're looking forward to hearing him share his insights of what he learned as an international student, crucially, how he planned his time and got his most out of his studies. So thanks for joining us, Lukas, and over to you.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate that. Hi, everybody. Pat just thankfully introduced me. My name is Lukas. I hope you guys had an amazing event so far. Thank you to UK Education Guide and BSA for making this happen. I'm really thankful for being here. And I hope we can have a little session together where I can share some of my insights, which hopefully will help you go through, that transition as Pat just mentioned. Lorraine, if we can just go to the next slide. Before we start, by the way, this should be a very interactive session. I know the guys are keeping an eye on the Q&A section. So if you have any questions throughout, I'll try to leave some time at the end for some Q&A as well. Just please just ask, because that's going to make it a lot more fun for yourselves as well as for myself, to be fair. And I think it's always the best way to, get a bit of experience across. But before we start, just some really quick backgrounds on me. Obviously, my name is Lukas Schlenker. As Pat just mentioned, I'm an international student, or was born and raised in Germany. Came to the UK the first time when I was 18. I've then done a Bachelor of Science in Exeter, partially, and one part at one of my German universities. And then I've done a Master International Business also at Warwick University. And I'm now working for a company called Deltron Lifts. That's the small medium enterprise, so nothing special on paper, if you will. It's a company headquartered in Birmingham, and we've got 3 other regional branches across the UK. And since me and my business partner have joined the business in 2019, 2020, we moved the business from doing about 1.2 million revenue to about 8 or probably 10 this year. So that's within a span of 3 years. That shows you, if you just put your mind to something and you get the right education sector right, and you move forward, that you can achieve your dreams, I shall say. Right, but before we start, what we're going to talk about today is how you're going to basically plan your day. And I'd like to start at the beginning in a second with one of the biggest challenges I think most people face when they come from school or boarding school, go to university. What's one of the biggest challenges there? And that was a challenge I faced, a lot of my friends faced as well. And then we'll talk about some proven solutions that worked for me and for some other people. And then at the end, we'll come up with one main kind of term that will be really at the heart of this presentation. And then after that, we'll discuss 3 key items of that one solution before at the end I'll give you a bit of a golden rule that I found very helpful for myself, and I hope that will be beneficial to you as well. And then hopefully we'll get some questions in the Q&A. So let's get cracking. Lorraine, if you could just flick the slide again. Enough talking from me about me, by the way. So that's that now. Right. So what do we think is the biggest challenge, or what is a challenge a lot of students face? Is suddenly when you move from school, boarding school, to university, suddenly you'll find you'll have a lot of time, you'll have a lot of hours that suddenly become available, because the school environment, as Pat just pointed out, is a very structured environment. You'll find, if you think about it, your days are laid out for you. You know exactly what you're going to do at what time. And if you don't do it, there's usually somebody, I would hope, that would care about that and would probably even, get you in for a chat. Your parents might be then in the chat as well, after you've done it a couple of times. Whereas at university, that whole thing just completely changes. And that's something a lot of people struggle with at the beginning, where they just get a bit lost. And although they might think they are being busy or doing stuff, it's often more at a level where it really feels like, from an objective perspective, where you're more like floating around rather than actually being very productive. One of the examples is, for example, you've got no structured days. Yes, you got your lectures, but they're not being that monitored really, whether you're there or not. You got no supervisor preparing you. You got to do that all yourself, and the lecture halls are a lot bigger than your classrooms you're used to, I would imagine. So that is the biggest challenge, being able to then take these hours you've got available now and make them work for you in the best way, because there's nobody else doing it for you anymore. That ship sailed now. And up until this moment in life, you've actually always had somebody to kind of, prepare your life for you and structure your life for you, whether this is now going to change. From a solution point of view, this is the challenge now. Lorraine, if you could flick to the next slide. What I found have been very proven solutions, not only for myself, but also for other people, is 5 solutions I've listed on the slides there. And I only like to mention little bullet points, so we can have a bit more of an interaction really. Is the 5 points I've stated there. And the first 2 points relate to the academic side of university, of the university experience, and the other 3 points, they relate more to the social side of university, which is also part of the experience and therefore should not be forgotten. So firstly, with all these hours, as I said, it's your responsibility. University is your responsibility. You'll need to figure out yourself how well you want to do at university, because nobody else will do the job for you at university anymore. So having self-discipline will help you to keep checking on yourself, because there is nobody else anymore around that will actually proactively check on you. Yes, you've got revision lectures and so on, but the only person that really will be checking or will be, really interested in your progress is yourself. And it's up to you to make sure you get that self-discipline in line to, ensure you actually get done what you want to get done. And everybody can have different goals. But having that self-discipline will really help you to have quite a smooth sailing experience throughout the university degree. And that then combined with being able to plan the hours, that's the second point now, plan your hours productively in the day, because as we've just said, you've got quite a few hours once you come to university where you may think, bloody hell, I've got loads of time now. And how do I fill that productively now? So self-discipline will help you to do that. And then in terms of structuring your day productively, it's very important from an academic point of view to understand, when have you got your lectures? How much do you have to prepare for each lecture? Do you have to review afterwards? Do you have any tutorials? Is there any jobs that you need to do to get these tutorials completed and be prepared? And interestingly here, you might think, but hold on, Lucas, usually, every course requires me to prepare the same amount of, or to put the same amount of preparation into it. However, as you're an individual, you've got strengths and weaknesses. And so you will have some modules at university where you will find, they actually, come quite natural to you. So you will actually, need a little bit less preparation, a little bit less hours on that module to achieve your goal. Whereas there will be other modules where you might have to put in a bit more effort and prepare a little bit more to actually get the same amount or the same grade at the end of the day. And this will take you a couple of weeks to figure out what modules you like, what modules you don't like. But basically, once you figure that out, to actually allocate the hours to each module in the correct way, understand how many hours you've got to put on every module, will make then, with your self-discipline, constantly checking whether you're actually doing the work, will actually start putting yourself in an academic routine, which will make you then actually very efficient in terms of studying, and fill up a lot of these hours that you come available that are for you quite unusual to be just available, will make them quite structured and planned again. So that's the academic side. And then obviously also big part of the university life is the social life, where you need to really as well structure that, because otherwise you probably get lost in, there's too many opportunities, there's too many people. So you really and truly want to get that structured as well, to make sure that doesn't impact your academic plan of university too much in a negative way. So you want to balance them two items next to it. And the core things here is really, you got to go to your students' union, or in Exeter, we used to call it the Students' Guild, for whatever reason. But you got to go to the Students' Union, because that's where the heart of the university is. That's where you've got all your societies, all your clubs, all your social events usually happen there, or at least that's where they start from. And it's quite important that you go in with the expectation of what's the interest, what's the hobbies I've got. Try to have a think before you go in, and then I can promise you there will be societies and clubs and teams and people that will share exactly your hobbies and interests, and they actually want to spend time with you and talk about these interests, or exercise together and do these things together. And that basically perfectly bolts onto the next point, which is the campus. From a campus perspective is obviously, that's where the student union usually is, but on campus, that's where you can meet your friends. That's where you can, go out for, have a meal with them, and go to the library. So the campus comes really in conjunction with the students union. It's a social hub that you need to engage in, to plan your day. And that comes then together again with the point above from the academic perspective. Plan your day properly, so then you find the right hours in the day when you can actually be on campus, when you can socialize, when can you go to the students union, and so on and so forth. And then finally, the social life in general, especially in the first year in the UK, that's quite an important thing to do, simply because that's where you meet your initial friends, because everybody will be there looking for friends. So it's actually quite a nice environment of having a lot of people around who want to get to know you. But it's important that you make the right connections, because with them people, you would probably be living together in the second year and in the third year, but probably off campus. So it's important that you make these connections early, because otherwise, I always found it a challenge, because I came in the middle of a degree. So most people already had their kind of social groups. So it was a bit more difficult for me to integrate. Whereas if you're there from the very beginning, you can build these social groups straight away. So overall, and that's the key word we want to talk about, or we've already talked about quite a bit. Overall, if you have your academic side sorted and your social side sorted as well with these 5 points, what they will give you is a certain structure. And although it sounds very simple to you, but structure is not only at university, but also in the future, is probably one of the most important things in life, because sometimes actually structure outperforms everybody else. Structure, for example, if you're a student with structure and with a plan and with a routine, I can assure you, highly likely, you'll, even if people are more natural to an academic field, that structure will outperform that. So with structure, you can, make up for everything else, really, because I've made that experience myself. And part of this structure, really, once you are prepared, once you've got the structure in place, you can really and easily balance your academic side and your social side quite easily next to each other. It's not some students, and I don't say that's not the way to do it, because I know students who've done it that way. They socialize quite a lot, I shall say, during the term. And then 2-3 weeks before the exams, before the deadlines, they actually, start doing revisions and start getting into the job. And that's quite a hectic period at the end then. Whereas if you have a structure in place, you can do all the socializing, seeing your friends, being on campus, but also have a quite stress-free exam period or structure period, because you're constantly on the ball. You have a routine that gives you an edge throughout the term, and then helps you reviewing in the exam period. And Lorraine, if you can just go to the next slide now. So now we actually figured out that structure. Oh, the slide is slightly off there, but that's not a problem. That structure is the key thing. With all the 5 solutions we just talked about, again, trying to avoid that you're getting lost by having too much time available, and having the self-discipline to put these things in place yourself to avoid this from happening and have the most productive experience from university, because that's what we all go to university for at the end of the day. But part of the structure, I thought I'm going to share 3 things I think are very, very important, and they will literally, they are like cheat codes. This is like cheat codes. So these things, if you do these things, they will literally change your university experience, and you'll literally be ahead, if that makes sense, to put it in a competitive sense. And the first thing is the calendar. Sounds simple, but it's not simple, because not like at school where your teachers probably hand out your weekly timetables. At university, that doesn't happen. So doing your own calendar and putting that calendar on the wall, let's say in your study room, or carrying it with you, will actually show you what are your fixed appointments every single week. And that calendar, to be fair, doesn't really change throughout each term. It changes every term, but throughout each term, it stays pretty fixed, because the lectures are always at fixed times, and the tutorials are, and so on. So you actually know when you have to be where. So if you put that every day in front of you, you exactly know what you need to do officially on that day. So having a calendar in place where you have, as the bullet points show there, you have your due dates, you have your exam times, you have your lecture times, you have your room numbers. That will really help you just to put a bit of organization in place. And that is really the foundation of the structure. And then on top of that, if Pat goes to the next slide now, if Lorraine goes to the next slide now, and on top of that, what I used to do is you have a little bit of a to-do list, and that could be just on a piece of paper with a pen, and just basically write down every day what you're meant to do. And the secret of every to-do list is the feeling of success. Yeah, because you actually constantly feel, and because you're ticking it off. It sounds so simple, but it really helps at work as well in the later stage. Ticking things off gives you a sense of achievement. So every day you will have completed your to-do list, and every day you will have a sense of achievement, which will then motivate you as you go through the term. So if you just recap, so you got the calendar that is fixed every week and just stays there. And then you got a daily to-do list where you write down your tasks. What do I have to do? Do I have to review? Do I have to prepare? Am I going to see some friends later today? Do I have to do any special exercise for my society? And so on. These things you can just write down, and you'll notice that you'll get a lot more done by doing this than if you not write it down and you just try to remember things. For example, at work, we've got employees who they get really nervous after they had 5 emails and 2 phone calls, and that's then their end of their day, and that's them done then for the day. Whereas we've got other employees who can answer 100 emails, do 20 phone calls a day and 3 meetings, and they're just having smooth sailing. And the only difference between them 2 types of is usually the one type simplifies it and writes it down on a to-do list and actually finds out, well, this actually is not that bad, compared to the others who just try to remember the things they need to do, and they lose track. Hence, they then get quite nervous and become actually quite unproductive. So yeah, that's the to-do list. And then the third, Lorraine, if you just skip, the third a part of the structure I can only recommend you doing is constant reviewing. And as I said, the other 2 points were also cheat codes. Another secret, this is the golden cheat route rule, if I can mention it that way. This is literally the if you want to have a very stress-free experience at university, having a constant review pattern in your structure, which you do. You've got your calendar, you do your to-do list, and part of the to-do list is your constant reviewing of your lectures and of your notes. That will make you your university experience absolutely fantastic, because you won't have a lot of stress at the end of the exam, at the end of the term when you prepare for your exams. So what I used to do is every lecture, you attend every lecture, and obviously as you go along, you either type notes or you write them down. And then straight after the lecture, you quickly sit down and just make sure everything is nice and neat, because in 4 weeks' time, you won't know why you scribbled something on that slide or why you scribbled something on that slide. So just making sure your notes are up to date, quickly reading through them. I'm not saying you've got to study them, every week or every day, but just quickly reading through them every day. After each lecture, you do that individually. And then on the weekend, maybe spend another hour here, there, and there just to go through it again. You will see that when it comes to preparing for the exams, most of it will already be in your long-term memory. Whereas what other students do is if they just study a lot before each exam, that will go in your short-term memory, but it won't stick. And obviously you do want to go to university to learn something and take something with it to then obviously bring it into the real kind of real life experience. So yeah, reviewing, to-do list, calendar is all part of the overall structure, which will then really and truly will make your university experience great, where you'll be excelling academically. And whether you're natural to academics or not, the structure will solve that for you. I can assure you that. But also have a really, really good time at university, which is what we're going there as well. And you can ask me, I've never missed one social event I wanted to go to, but I've also constantly managed to stay on top from an academic perspective. And a couple of my friends did as well, and had no stress throughout the exam period. So actually university was a very nice experience for myself, and I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. But the structure, I always felt avoided me feeling lost and made me quite an efficient person. And now I'm doing the same thing now. Every day I've got the same structure. And then Lorraine, if you just go to the next slide now.
Lucas, can I just interrupt? Sorry.
Of course you can, Pat.
Sorry.
Of course you can, Pat.
Just had two great questions from Avneil, and they're related to your 3 points. So I just want to go on and lose that thread, if that's okay to
no, of course you can. Of course you can. That's fantastic. So thank you.
Avneil has asked 2 questions and said, obviously I know you're going to answer this and say they're both important, but Avneil said, which do you think is most important, the to-do list or the calendar? So, I mean,
that's a good question.
That's for you.
It's an interesting question, because although I listed them as two separate points, Avneil, they really much come in line, and they come together really, because if you do a to-do list every day, you could almost argue that's your calendar, if that makes sense. However, what I was trying to refer with the calendar is you only do the calendar once a term, once you know where your lectures are. Yeah. Once you know where your lectures are, where you have to go, what time your tutorials are, put it on a little spreadsheet, on an Excel document or something, or write it down, handwritten. I used to do it handwritten, and just you can tape that calendar to your wall, because that calendar won't change. It will always be the same, and that will kind of guide your rhythm. So you only have to do that once a term. So it's actually quite low effort with high benefit. So which is what everybody really likes. Low effort, high benefit. That's the jackpot. And then every day throughout the term, you have a little to-do list, and that could only be 2. Sometimes I only had 1 or 2 points on my to-do list, and I was done by 10 o'clock with my to-do list, and then the rest of the day off I went, kind of thing. So it's hard to actually say one is more important than the other.
But different purposes, really.
Different purposes. But if you would ask me, pinpoint me, I'd say, because the to-do list will become your calendar if you do the to-do list properly. So then I'd rather focus on the to-do list.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great answer. Thank you. And then a very specific point about whether it's best to have your to-do list on your phone or in notes. What would you say? Is it better to have it sort of like, so you carry it with you on your phone, or?
From my experience, 25 years old, so I'm pretty good with technology. I know my way around, and you can see the difference at the workplace between our generation and there's just a lot more technology involved now, and we know how to use it quite well. However, with a to-do list, I can only recommend write it down, handwrite it on a piece of paper. It will make you, because you might think you've got a lot of stuff to do. You might think, oh, bloody hell, I've got a lecture tomorrow. I still got to revise. I've got an exam on Friday. I've got a deadline the following week. And you get a bit emotional, you get a bit stressed, which is just human. But if you start writing it down, take 5 minutes and write it down, you actually find, oh, there's only 3-4 points on my to-do list now. So suddenly you start calming yourself down, because it's actually not that big of a challenge anymore. But if you think about it in your head as individual challenges and you don't write them down, it feels like a mountain to climb, where actually it might only be a little hill. So
Yeah.
I'd write it down, handwriting on a piece of paper.
I think that's still a good approach, isn't it? And then if you want
Yes.
to carry it around and summarize that on your phone if you're going onto campus,
That's
and
fine. That's not a
then
problem.
stick it on your phone, and
Yeah.
so you
I mean,
don't
you can buy
lose
some
a
pretty
bit of
good.
paper.
Spot on. Spot on.
That's great. Now those are the questions for now, but I'll keep an eye out. So I shall go.
Do you want me to crack on with the last? That's my last slide now. Yeah, so I'll crack on. So on the last slide, so basically the presentation is now finished. And thank you, Avniel, for the questions. I really appreciate that. Maybe we get some more. That'd be great. Because I'm happy to answer them. This is now my personal golden rule. I've talked about cheat codes. I talked about structure, which will actually make your university life quite efficient, quite straightforward. But my golden rule is, and I can only recommend that to anybody who's listening now, try to do some work experience, because that will make you see university in such a clearer picture than if you don't do it. Whether that's a couple of months between you start your degree and you finish school, or next to school, whether that's anything you can think of, anything. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I've got two pictures here. One is our boardroom in our head office, so more office related, and the other is just our factory, also obviously at our head office. Whatever it is, whether it's manual, physical work, doesn't really matter, or behind a screen. Doesn't really matter, because what work experience does is it gives you a sense of real life experience, I shall call it, because at school everything is quite theoretical. So you might be really good at maths, for example, but then if you go to university, you actually might find out, bloody hell, I don't really enjoy maths. But you want to take the most out of your university experience. So I can only point out again, if you do some work experience, that will make your picture clearer. And you might find out, I love numbers, I love maths, but I just found out actually what I like is I like to help people with it. So you might want to become an accountant, or we'll go into economics, where you see some direct impacts on what you do with your numbers. But you got to go out and make that experience and kind of narrow down your pool of opportunities, because nowadays we are in a century where we can do what we want. But so narrowing it down is very, very efficient, and will make you, like, a year now, a couple months now, will save you a lot of time in 10, 20 years time, because you don't want to find out with 35 that you're actually doing something you don't enjoy.
And Lucas, sorry to interrupt. We're literally running out of time, so we've got 2 minutes. Sorry, no, we've just got.
No, but that's it. No, I'm finished. I'm finished.
No, that's
grand.
No, we've just got 2 minutes because we've had another question. I hope you don't mind me interrupting you.
No, crack on quickly. We'll do it quickly.
So because there's 2 things I need to say, because I need to mention about. Please fill in this questionnaire in the chat function.
Yes.
I'm desperate for you guys to fill these in. That's to the students. Please fill it in so we can feed back to universities. It is in the chat function for all of you. Please do fill it in. Final question from a year 10 pupil. So that's 14, 15.
Right.
This is a great question, because what we're always saying is start your planning as early as possible. So what small steps could a 14, 15-year-old plan now to be more prepared for the structure of university? Just in 1 minute, I'll put you on the spot.
That's a great question. What I would do is I take a piece of paper every day, a little one about that big, just a little one, take a pen and just write down, put a date at the top and write down, go to school, lecture, or the subjects you've got, homework, achieved, yes, no. And I will just start doing that, and then you just tick it off as you go along. And if you're doing that now, once you go to university, you'll be used to it. And then when you're then at university, that will become natural to you. So you won't even think about, bloody hell, I've got so many hours now. What do I do? So you won't struggle at all. You start putting the structure in place now. So that's what I would do. Quick answer. I
think that's a brilliant answer, and a wonderful way to finish. So, and thanks so much for that question, because it is really important to start early and getting that discipline and that structure, as Lucas has stressed throughout that presentation.
Yes.
The structure, the more earlier you can plan a structure in your own lives that you are dictating rather than somebody else, the better. The easier the transition will be for you. Lucas, we're right on the 1 o'clock. We're right on time. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
And I think it's been wonderful, and I hope everyone who's participated and who's attended has got loads out of that. And the one thing is structure.
That's it. That's the key.
Yes, have a structure, folks. That's just the big takeout today. So thank you, Lucas, and yeah, we'll hand over to Ollie and Raf now.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Enjoy the day.